out here, the only law enforcement presence we've seen all day today are just the deputies who are now staged outside of Nancy's home. That's a 24/7 staging for these deputies. It's been in place for the last 48 hours or so, and that was at request of the family to protect the property. But out here, as you mentioned, this case is getting a lot of national attention, and that's in part due to the amount of media that is covering it for blocks. And Troy, you were out here, you know, there's just so many media outlets stretching down the street. So as soon as those new photos and videos were released, we immediately saw a lot of flurry from the media, because this, like you mentioned, is the first big development that we've seen in the week that we've been covering it. Those videos came from this doorstep behind me. I want to point out that there is a lot of desert landscaping in the way between the videos and the street from where we are, and that's a big part of why we haven't seen any neighbor video that has detected anything. So from what we can tell, just so far we have video from those doorbell cameras, but that doorbell has been missing since this case started, and the sheriff's office tells us that they have not been able to locate the doorbell. And so again, you heard that they've been working with the software companies to be able to get those images back and be able to see them. But we do know that this investigation is ongoing at multiple locations. The sheriff's office told us that they plan to be back out here today. Investigators will be conducting follow-up on new leads, is what they say. And so they said we can expect to see them at Nancy's house and also her daughter Annie's house, who lives about 10 minutes away from here. We've seen them at her house periodically through the week. Another thing I want to point out is it was FBI Director Kash Patel who first posted these images and videos, and we know that he is in Tucson currently. He is here on unrelated business, supposedly, but he's also being briefed on this case throughout the week, every day, we're told. And so we knew it was very possible that he would be visiting the command post that has been set up 24 hours around the clock. The FBI is bringing in agents from all over the country. Every day they tell us new agents are arriving to be able to help out with this case. And so a lot of stuff is happening behind the scenes. Just because we're not seeing investigators working in front of Nancy's house anymore, that doesn't mean that they're not spending every minute of the day trying to figure out who that person in these videos are and where Nancy is. Troy and Tram.
You know, Gabriella, here we are. It is day 10. This is finally a first big break in this case after going on pretty much not a whole lot of information aside from when Nancy Guthrie was kidnapped on the very first night on that Sunday early morning hour. But, you know, as you stand there, we have seen waves of law enforcement come and go. And so take us back, because I know you've covered this extensively. Troy and I have been down there as well. We've seen, you know, 36 plus media out there getting all this national attention. But we've seen, you know, law enforcement really come and go and look at specific areas of the house. Take us back to what they've been doing for the past couple of days.
Well, Tram, I would say there's probably been 3 major searches of Nancy's house. The first one was when investigators first determined that she was missing. And that investigation, you know, covered the entire property and beyond. We know they had search teams going through a lot of the desert landscaping that is around her neighborhood, going door to door in her neighborhood, asking neighbors if they had any camera. The second one was, if you remember, when the FBI became more involved in the case. They came back to do their own investigation, double check to make sure that they did in fact have all the evidence they needed. And then they came back for a third time, and that's when we saw them searching the backyard, more specifically the roof. They also that night towed Nancy's car out of her garage and into evidence. And so apart from those 3 big searches, we have seen investigators just on the property. Over the weekend, in fact, we saw 2 investigators appear to be looking at some sort of septic tank or manhole that's in the back of Nancy's property. And so they're just looking everywhere and anywhere, and we're told that's normal in an investigation like this. As they get new leads, they have to go back and kind of check out what they're hearing.
You know, I had somebody, Gabby, ask me just a few minutes ago, what about Ring doorbell cameras or other cameras there in the neighborhood? From what I remember, they said, isn't there a house directly across the street? From what I remember, kind of where you're standing right now is another street that goes up. Then I remember kind of an empty lot kind of off to the other side, and I don't think anybody's looking directly down at her home, from what I remember. That's number one. And number two, this is at least a 50-year-old neighborhood. Most of the homes are set back off the street, and the vegetation in front is mature. So you can see how other cameras wouldn't catch a car. You would assume at some point this perpetrator had a car in that neighborhood.
That's right, Trey. And I have been talking to some of the neighbors out here, and they tell me they do have cameras, but because of the vegetation, because of this landscaping that's kind of all over, grown out, they weren't able to really see to the road. And so that's something they've been looking through, trying to keep a close eye. But like you said, it's just too difficult to see through. But now maybe with these new images, it'll point to something that they didn't see before that can give them an idea. But at this point, they had not had a car identified that they could see from the street. And that's something a lot of these neighbors tell me they're thinking about, knowing that, the cameras that they do have in place didn't catch, a situation like this when they needed it to. And so, yeah, it's hard to see. Luckily, the doorbell camera, we see that person walk directly up to the doorbell. They didn't have any brush in between them. But if that camera tried to pick up from the street, it likely wouldn't have been able to because of just all of this landscaping.
One last thing. So I also want to point out, and you were there as well, Tram, but that neighborhood is kind of set off on its own. There are main streets around, but they're probably, what'd you say, a quarter mile, half a mile away?
Oh, yeah.
They're a ways out. So you would think the main streets might have cameras to catch somebody in that area, but that little neighborhood I wouldn't think does.
And we know with the main streets, authorities have been looking at the main streets, possibly their cameras as well, the nearby, I believe it was the convenience store, the Circle K or what have you. But Gabrielle, I'm wondering, do we know when the FBI or law enforcement will be back out there again to survey and assess exactly any more clues at all? Because I feel like every time we have a little bit more, like on Friday, for instance, when that second note was sent to the local KOLD TV station down there, literally within hours, law enforcement swarmed that house once again. So now that we have another break, when do we think that law enforcement will be back out there once again looking for any more details?
Well, Tram, the Pima County Sheriff's Department told us yesterday that we could expect to see investigators conducting follow-up at both the Guthrie residences yesterday and today. But really, honestly, at any time, as soon as they get that information, they come out here to check it out. I don't know if it will be as much of a large-scale investigation or search that we've seen in the times past, but we do know that they said we can expect to see investigators on the property looking into new leads they describe. And so unsure if that's in relation to these pictures that we're now seeing or something else they're hearing. They're still getting hundreds of tips every day about Nancy's disappearance. And so they, of course, have to take each one of those very seriously and conduct follow-up. We haven't seen anyone yet, but we'll be sure to update you as soon as we do. And one more thing that I wanted to point out that we heard from the Sheriff's Department today is that they do not plan on having a press conference so far today. At first, they were telling us as soon as the next big development happened, they would be speaking, but today they have not yet planned one. So as soon as we hear if one becomes scheduled for later today, we'll let you know as well.
Yeah, and it seems like the FBI taking the lead, at least at this point. Gabby, thank you so much. And we'll have more from Gabby throughout the day here on 12 News and our other crews that are heading out there.